1. Praise the Lord, Truth Church, and welcome to Life Group. Today we are going to continue the series on Who is Jesus. I pray that over the last few days you have been looking into the Gospels and you have been studying them, praying about them, especially during this week, which is Passion Week, that you would examine your understanding of who Jesus is from a biblical perspective. One of the things that I find very interesting about Jesus is that he is called a teacher more than probably anything else in the Gospels. And the reason is he taught people through parables, through stories, through physical illustrations. He brought the kingdom of heaven down to a very human point of view. But there are times still when Jesus speaks that even his disciples didn't get it and they had to ask questions. And I'm really glad that they did, because Jesus would take them aside and he would explain what he meant. And some things they still didn't get until after the crucifixion. And the reason I'm glad about that is because there's a lot of times I've approached the scripture and been like, I really don't know what's going on here. And I've had to pray and ask the Lord to lead and guide me, and the scriptures come to life. The Lord's spoken to me, or I've heard someone preach, or I've heard this message, and it all comes together and it's like, I get it. And really what Jesus is trying to do is teach us who we're supposed to be. There is a sermon that Jesus preaches that we call the Sermon on the Mount. It's found in Matthew 5, 6, and 7. There is a parallel sermon. Imagine me preaching the same sermon twice, like I used to in Grand Rapids. I would preach up there, and then I would preach down here. It may be the same passage, but it has a little different flavor between the two congregations. And so in Luke records the same sermon, but it's in a plane, it's in a different place. And the tone of Jesus is a little bit different, and you're going to read that. You're going to read Luke's version of the sermon in your guide today. But at the end of both of the sermons, Jesus uses this analogy. He says this. He says, any man that listens to my words and doesn't do them is like a foolish man who builds his house upon sand, that when storms come, his house falls flat. Then he says, any person that hears my words and does do them, takes them to heart, listens with the intent to obey, acts on what he says, then that person is wise, and like a wise builder, builds their house upon a rock. And I love how Luke says this in the King James Version, that when the rains came, they vehemently beat against that house, but it didn't fall. Rain will come in everyone's life. Trials, troubles, circumstances will come in every single person's life. But it is tied up in our ability to hear the lessons Jesus is giving us through his word, through prayer, through the ministry of others, and applying them to our life. And if we do, and we live what Jesus asks us to live, we are wise. Yes, it will rain. Yes, storms will come. But your house will not fall apart. I pray that as you go through this study today, that your eyes are open maybe to some different perspective as Jesus teaches you how he wants you to live. God bless you, and welcome to Life Group.